Welcome to the Permanent Podcast, real talk about owning, operating, buying, and selling small businesses. The reality is that businesses are made up of people, and people are messy. So, how do you navigate such a messy and complicated landscape? Well, let's talk about it on the Permanent Podcast. This is 5-Minute Management, short episodes with actionable insights to help you as you operate, manage, and work on your team. Today, we're talking about how to get better at hiring and keeping better talent. What's one of the biggest challenges in operating a small business? Probably hiring, right? How do you find and hire the right people? And maybe in the context of these last few years, it's been the biggest challenge that you've had to navigate. Well, today we have a guest joining our very own Kelie Morgan. Ashley Day, an operating partner at FFL Partners, joins us all the way from San Francisco. So Kelie is our full-time talent recruiter. She's helping our portfolio companies do international-wide searches to find and hire the best people for their teams. Ashley works in middle-sized companies, so she's operating at a bigger scale. We're jumping into the middle of a conversation that Kelie and Ashley had around what smaller companies can learn from some of these bigger companies when it comes to up-leveling their hiring processes. Ashley will speak first, and she has the Australian accent, which is always fun. And Kelie will come in, and she has the Missouri accent. And we hope that this is something helpful for you, and you can get some helpful tips from today's 5-Minute Management. How to get better at hiring and keeping better talent.
Some of the things that I've seen be really successful at big companies to up-level their hiring process that I think small and medium-sized companies can take into their practice is being thoughtful about how you're trying to attract your talent. So as a candidate goes through a hiring process, what are their touch points with you? What are they learning about the opportunity? And how are you engaging them? How long does it take someone to move through a hiring process from the point that they engage to the point where you make an offer? How long is that taking?
That's a really important metric that we've been tracking closely here. And that's because through bad experiences of losing finalist candidates in the final hour, we've had to get faster. So for us, I'm finding that sweet spot is like 3 to 4 weeks, like really 4 weeks to an offer is about the longest that we want to go. I mean, obviously, if we're hiring an executive level position, it's going to be different. But for kind of professional level roles, really 3 to 4 weeks is the sweet spot. And when we've gone longer than that, we've lost our best finalist candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is still a hot talent market, so people still have options. Another area that you can think about how to improve your recruiting process is to see what your competitors are doing, right? So you can look at their job postings and how are they framing the opportunities? Even just looking more broadly in your local market to see who are posting jobs in the pay scale that I'm posting in and what are they doing to attract talent? Because they might be taking employees from you. And I think that's really meaningful as you think about in the lower market and you think about your hourly employees. Your competitors are not even necessarily who you think they are when it comes to talent. I might be a healthcare company, but a third of my hourly employee base left to go to work at Amazon. Maybe that's about pay, but maybe there are other factors there as well that you could be looking at.
That's exactly right. Your competitors aren't just the people in your same exact industry and space. And so one of the exercises that I walk through with our portfolio company leaders is let's pipeline talent. Let's look at your competitors. Let's look at your city, your market that you're hiring in, and sometimes beyond that. And let's start looking for people who would be great additions to your team. And then let's start building relationships with those people. So it usually starts with some Google searching. We get deep on LinkedIn looking for people, and then we figure out a plan around how are we going to outreach these people? Does it make sense to come from me, from Permanent Equity? Does it make sense to come from you, the CEO? And let's start building relationships with people so that when they start thinking about their next opportunity, we're top of mind for them. And I think this is a really easy exercise. It doesn't take a lot of time and effort, but if you kind of have a long-term mindset to talent, which we do here at Permanent Equity, it pays off in the long run. And it definitely can pay off during a recessionary environment because there could be turmoil, there could be layoffs at these companies. And if you have those relationships, even really soft, lukewarm relationships developed, like they know you exist. And so you're on their radar.
I love that because in a way, and I think, Kelie, you're bringing more of what we would typically think of as executive recruiting outreach. You're taking that kind of high-touch recruiting to an employee base that hasn't necessarily experienced before. They haven't had someone reach out to them and say, hey, have you thought about our company? We like your skill set and we think that you could be a really good fit. That can be really impactful for people. And certainly it depends on the scale that you're hiring. It doesn't work at a high pace of hiring, but it doesn't have to be just for senior hires. Another area that I think is really important is this concept of re-recruitment. We're talking a lot about recruiting people into an organization and bringing people in for the first time and getting them excited and joining. But you should also be thinking about how do you keep your existing employee population engaged? And that's really what the concept of re-recruitment means. So at the simplest level, trying to get better understanding or trying to make sure that you're clear on why people stay at an organization and why people are staying at your company can help you identify areas where you can keep people engaged and motivated. And so are you creating a culture or an environment where people want to show up for work? Do people have meaningful relationships in the company? These are all the things that I think it's important to focus on so that you keep those really high talented people that mean so much to you and your business success. Because we know that it costs a lot more, and not just financially, but it costs a lot more to bring new people into the organization than to keep the talent that you already have.
And I think this gives you a chance internally to look at different things like talent development, to start implementing things like reviews or meetings between your direct reports and kind of, all right, let's figure out who we've got here. Let's see if we have the people in the right seats. And so I think 2023 is going to be about figuring out how to do the most with what you have versus bringing in all of this external talent. I think that's still going to be happening, but I just know I've seen in the last 2 months, there's been a slowdown in hiring, and now it's about looking underneath the hood.
So today's 5-Minute Management actually serves to introduce a new series we're doing in writing as well. So you've heard the Outside Insights. We had Shane Parrish on last week. We'll have more guests coming on in the weeks to come. We're also doing it in writing as well. So sometimes we ask people questions and they fill out answers. Sometimes we do audio conversations and convert that to writing as well. This is one of those. So if you want to hear some more insights from this conversation where they're talking about their perspective on how you can get better at finding talent, hiring talent, keeping talent, and some of the challenges that are maybe ahead in whatever this climate is economically and in the workforce, you can go to permanentequity.com, look under the resources tab, and then go to For Operators. And if you scroll down to the posts area, you'll see several things about talent. And you can always follow us online, whether you're on LinkedIn or Twitter at Permanent Equity. I now leave you with our new legal disclaimer because that's right, we're a Big Kid podcast now. Joining us is our Chief Legal Officer and Compliance Czar, Taylor Hall.
This podcast is made available solely for educational purposes, and the information presented here does not constitute investment, legal, tax, or other professional advice, and should not be construed as an offering of advisory services or as a solicitation to buy, an offer to sell, or a recommendation of any securities or other financial instruments. The thoughts and opinions expressed by or through this podcast are those of the individual guests and speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Permanent Equity. The discussion on this podcast of any entity, product, or service does not imply an endorsement thereof, and the guests of this podcast may have a financial interest, whether through investment or otherwise, in any one or more of such entities, products, or services. This podcast is presented by Permanent Equity and may not be copied, reproduced, republished, or posted in any form without its express written consent.